All right, so in our next unit in social studies, we're actually going to be learning about the Korean War, which was 1950 to 1953. Now, when it comes to any kind of war and any kind of conflict in life, we have to ask the why. And so today what we're going to actually do is we're going to take a slightly different turn, because we're not actually going to be talking about Korea, but actually the politics that were at play. So we're going to talk about democracy and communism. So what this is actually a concept map. It's one way of learning how to take notes. So what we have is the main component of government right here. And then we'll be talking about democracy and then communism. And then for our activity, we have 2 extra boxes, but that's for later. Okay, so, yeah. All right, so first things first is what I want you to do is to take one of those extra sheets of paper that I have, and you're going to copy what I have written down on this concept map, okay? All right, so go ahead and write the government part, the democracy part, and the communism part, and make boxes, okay? And I'm going to do it up here too, okay?
All right.
So government. Probably actually did this way too big. I don't have as much space as you do. Now we have democracy. If you need help with spelling and you can't see the board, just look on the concept map that's in front of you. And communism. Now the definition of government. Do you know what the definition of government is? Okay. So the definition of government is the ruling, it's the authority. We learned that last week with our academic words. The authority to rule a group of people. I'm going to put that. I should have brought an extra marker so that way I could differentiate the colors. But the authority to rule a group of people. What's the government mean?
The authority to rule a group of people.
Nice job. Okay. So democracy, and during the 1950s and during the Cold War and during the Korean War specifically, we had 2 main powers kind of at each other. It was democracy and communism. Now democracy, there's going to be a lot of attributes, but the one thing that I want you to remember is it's about the rights of the people and the voice of the people. So that's what I'm going to have you write down. Okay? The rights and the voice of the people. Okay. So the rights of the people, the voice of the people. What is democracy about?
The rights of the people and the voice of the people.
Okay, so I'm going to give you these list of long attributes. You do not have to write them down. But when we do our country of cards, they're actually going to be looking more like this. But you got to be thinking about the rights of the people. Okay? So there's an emphasis on rights. Competitive elections, that allows for the voice of the people. Rule of law, no one is above the law. That's the rights of the people again. Civic culture, a connection of the population to politics, interest groups. That's the voice of the people. Okay? So rights of the people, voice of the people. Okay, so now communism. I should have had boxing gloves drawn on here. Anyway, so communism is about ensuring economic and social stability and equality under government control. It's ensuring economic and social stability and equality under government control. What is communism?
Ensuring economic and social stability under equality and under government control.
Yes. So, we're going to find different countries have different contexts and different aspects to their government, but if they have that as their main goal, then it's communism. So these were kind of the main other points that we'll be looking at. It has an emphasis that everyone should be economically and socially stable and equal. We already have that up there. Government distributes economic power. That's government control and economic again. So anything economic, anything social. It points toward that direction. End goal is for government eventually not needed. Now this sounds counterintuitive or opposite because of government control. But this was the creator of communism's point. However, historically, so this is going to be part of it, that the government takes control of everything and then relents it. Now, historically, that never has happened. What's happened is there's one political party that continues rule, or there's government has command over economics, media, etc. So when we are thinking about the Korean War, how do these governments differ, and why would they have been opposed to each other? Okay. So now we're going to go through our cards, because at the end of this lesson we're going to be asking ourselves, why was the U.S. maybe opposed to communism coming into North Korea? Or actually it was Korea at that time, okay? So, but first we got to figure out what kind of countries we're working with, all right? Now some of these are going to be in the past, so some of these may be repeated, but their government's changed, and some of them are just kind of constant. So China, 1939, 1976, that's our country that we're working with. Now it says it has one major leader, any opposing thoughts are silenced, revolution to progress people economic and socially, government control the agriculture. Well, one major leader, it says in the communism part, now notice there's a lot of attributes, not listed up here, but listed here. So I'm going to go over here. One major leader, well, it says historically there was one political party. Any opposing thoughts are silenced, well, that's government control, revolution to progress people economic socially. Well, that's the total definition of communism. And then government controlled agriculture. Again, agriculture is part of the economics. So I'm going to say that China back then was communist. Now the United States. Specific rights determined to be protected. That's rights right over there.
Mm-hmm.
And then President and Congress are voted by the people. Free market economics, free trade. Interest groups change political processes. Politicians are to be held accountable to law. Two major parties to vote for. Other minor parties to vote for too. So specific rights, well, that's the emphasis on rights. President and Congress are voted by the people. Well, that's the voice of the people. Free market economics, that's also voice of the people, because the definition of free market economics is about my say in how I run my business. Interest groups, well, that's the civic cultural voice of the people. Politicians are to be held accountable to law, that's rule of law, rights. The two major parties to vote for, well, that's voice of people. When you have choice, you have a voice. That's another rule. When you have choice, you have a voice. Okay? I'm going to put that under democracy. So what is the rule that we're looking for with our government lesson is that if it has this certain attributes, it falls under communism. If it's talking about economic and social, it's communism. If it's talking about rights, we're going to look at democracy. Okay? So if economic and social, communism. If about rights, democracy. Okay, so Great Britain. It says, has a parliamentary representative voted by the people. People allowed to protest political issues. Multiple political parties to vote for. Free market economics. Politicians held accountable for the law. Now you just pointed. What did you point to?
Democracy.
Democracy, why?
People. Voice of the people.
Okay, how does it say voice of the people? I'll give you the card and then you tell me.
People allowed to protest political issues.
Okay, so is that rights of the people or voice of the people?
Voice.
Okay, what else?
Multiple political parties to vote for.
Okay, and why is that a democracy issue?
It gives people the choice to vote.
And what is so important about choice?
Choice has a voice.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna, yep, it is a democracy one. Now this one might be a little bit hard. India. Okay, and I'm talking about present day India, not the ones that were back in the 1950s or before. But rights are determined. But religion plays a role in how people are treated. Multiple political parties to vote for. Most people vote. Free market economy, but yet is still struggling at this point. Some political parties are based on religious convictions, and then there's a range of interest groups on politics. So what do you think should fit under this? And by the way, I forgot to say that if we have a question about one, we have a question box. So we can go over it together. So, India. Democratic, communist, or questionable?
I'd have to say questionable. It has some communistic points, but it also has some democratic points.
Okay, so what are the communist points that you're pointing out?
You don't have a choice.
How do you not have a choice?
You have a choice to vote, but
Okay.
voting,
So we're leaning, but
but the first point,
rights are determined.
rights are determined, communistic.
Okay, so when it says rights, when I meant by rights are determined, it means that there's a constitution. And that goes with the rights of the people. Because when you have a document that tells you how to live, or what your rights are, then nothing else can go against it. That's the reason why that whole Supreme Court issue with the gay marriage and the baker became such an issue, because one side said, well, the 14th Amendment says that we don't get discriminated against, and the First Amendment says, well, freedom of religion. So which is it, right? And that's why it had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. So that would actually be a democracy issue too, because there's a constitution, whereas communism, the leader says whatever he wants, and you just have to follow it. That was the issue with Stalin. Did you hear about who Stalin was? Okay, so he wanted economic and social standing, but if anybody opposed him verbally, he'd kill him. Okay? So, but that was good thinking about trying to figure out how that worked. Now, the religion plays a role that can throw somebody off, because that's not necessarily your rights determined on it by a constitution, right? But if it's traditions, social traditions usually persist no matter what the law is. We deal with that even in the U.S. history with the Jim Crow laws. By law, by as far as 1865, there was no slaves, right? Equal standing, supposedly. But in the South, there was still a lot of segregation and racism, right? Multiple political parties to vote for, that's democracy. Most people vote, that helps with voice. Free market economy, voice. But it's struggling at this point. Now, is economy, do you have to have a strong economy to be a democracy by its definition? No, good. Do you have to be one, or the focus to be one right here? Right. So the focus of economy is on communism. Now, again, both of them historically do not present that everyone is economically strong. But to have a voice in your free market, that's key to rights. Then political parties based on religious convictions, that's just whoever wants to have a say in politics, raise the interest groups. So this one is a democracy one. It's a weak democracy, so we can put it like in a separate pile, but it's a democracy nonetheless. So I'm going to give you these last 4 cards. You're going to read the attributes out loud, and I want you to figure out which one it is the way that we did it. So you read through the attributes and say, well, is that communism or is that democracy, okay? And then again, if you don't have a question, explain why verbally. Okay?
Russia, USSR, 1917 to 1991. One main leader / party, no voting, any dissension was silenced, government had total control of the economy. That is communist.
Why?
One main leader,
Okay.
government has total control,
Okay.
and any dissension was silenced.
So that was a big key component. One thing I forgot to write on that card, because we can find any kind of dictatorship doing the same thing. If you ever heard of King Henry VIII, beforehand, it was kind of a theocracy with the Catholic Church telling how to rule the country. When he wanted to divorce his wife, but that wasn't okay by the Catholic Church, he said, well, I'm going to have my own rule. One thing I forgot is that Stalin, no matter how he ruled, he still wanted an economic and social equality. And so he took control of the economic stature. But yes, you're correct, it was communist. And that's the really biggest reason why we had the Cold War as of 1945 to 1991, was this whole issue of the Iron Curtain, or the communism versus democracy. And we can go into more stories. I could tell you stories of the issues that happened back then too. So France.
France, 1958 to present. As a president, prime minister voted for by the people, specific rights are determined to be protected, leading economic power, multiple political parties, and many interest groups.
Okay. Is it democracy, rights of the people, voice of the people, or communism, establishing economic and social stability under equality, under government control?
I'd have to say democracy.
Yeah. Okay.
Voted for by the people,
Mm-hmm.
leading economic power,
Mm-hmm.
many interest groups.
Yes. Yep. See why I put it under democracy. And for once, its democracy is strong. As of post-French Revolution, it kept going up and down, because it had a leader, again, not necessarily communist, but a leader that would take total control. And that's why communism, we can say, oh, historically it's all about this total control, but really it's about what was the goal of the government. And the goal of the government, even under Stalin, even under Lenin, was about making everybody equal socially and economic. Now, how did that play out? Well, not the best. Both for USSR and China, because both of them took control of the agriculture to an extent that actually killed thousands of people. But they were trying to make everybody equal. All right.
Russia, 1991 to present. Has a presidency and parliament to vote for, no widespread legitimacy. It says there is.
Can I write in cursive on you? Okay. It says there is political involvement.
On part of the people, lout polls say
Does
otherwise.
the polls say otherwise? Yeah.
One strong political power through other parties exists.
Though? Yeah.
Not a very strong economy, free mandated.
Free market. Yeah. So, present day Russia, what kind of government is it? Is it democracy, rights of the people, voice of the people, communism, ensuring economic and social stability and equality under government control?
I'd have to say weak democracy.
Okay.
Because it still has some communist stuff in there with the one strong political power.
Yeah. Which, yeah. You at least have a choice there for the voice, but if there's a prevailing group that doesn't really allow for any other voices, then it's kind of the control part. Now, here's a fun fact for you. The U.S. has multiple political parties, but we only hear of two. So it's an irony there, too. But yeah, they're trying to be more democratic, so you're right with the democracy part. All right.
China, 1976 to present. Goal is to be economically and socially stable for the entire population. Strength is to belong to one party but no longer one person. Free market economics, limited free speech, can vote for leaders. I have to say this is weak communism. It still has economically and socially stable, one party and limited speech, but you can vote for leaders, making it a bit weaker.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's allowing for a little bit more voice, but it still has control of voice. And you're right, it is a communist nation. But it would be like having only the Democratic Party or only the Republican Party, and you can only vote for that party. And that's why it has that communist part, that lack of voice. And when it talks about voice, government control over media, there's a lot of stuff that we see on YouTube that's not there. But they are about economic and social equality. Now, how China has done it is that they are what's called a communist capitalist. So they took something from democracy, the capitalism, the free market on here, but they put it with their ideology of communism. So their goal is still to let everybody be equal, let everybody be stable, and make sure that the government's helping with that. But they said that in the area of economics, the way to make everybody equal is to let them have their say. So yeah, good. But you can see at least that there's some governments that stick straight to the rules, right? Democracy being the rights of the people, the voice of the people. Communism, ensuring economic and social stability and equality under government control. But then we see that as time goes on, we have those rules, but the reality of how history works is that it's never black and white. And so when we study the Korean War and the conflict between North and South, it's not going to be one way or the other. There's always two sides to history as well. Okay, so what is democracy again?
The rights of the people and the voice of the people.
What's it again?
The rights of the people and the voice of the people.
I can hardly hear you.
The rights of the people and the voice of the people. I'm not going to shout.
Communism. Better be loud on this one.
Ensuring economic and social stability and equality under government control.
Nice job. So, for our exit ticket today, what is an example of democracy?
The United States.
Other than the United States?
Great Britain.
Okay. Why?
The voice of the people.
How does it have the voice of the people?
You have the choice to vote.
For who? Can't vote for the Queen. Who do you get to vote for?
Political issues.
Political issues, as well as Parliament. Okay, communism. Other than North Korea, what's a communist country?
China.
How so?
Government controls everything.
Okay, according to the definition, how does it control?
Social and economic stability.
Mm-hmm. So how?
It filters what goes in and out through the economy.
Okay. Yes. All right, so I want you to think about this question because it's what's going to lead up into the Korean War. Why do you think the U.S. was opposed to communism coming into Korea?
They wanted to keep as many people democratic and not have people. They wanted people to have rights. They wanted them to be heard. They didn't want the government to come in and just control everything.
Which is usually the mantra of the U.S. and why. What we're going to see is there's a term called Big Brother. And when they see a nation taking away human rights from their own citizens, we suddenly jump in. And that happens, of course, from the course of the World War I to even up to this day. So.